I want to talk about something that um, God has given me that I've never heard anybody else talk about before. And sometimes actually, I think one other time I've heard it. Um, but when I bring it up, it seems like people have a hard time receiving it. But I'll just lay it out there, and we'll see what you think, and we can talk about it. So the Book of Acts, I just looked, and Matt Slick on Carm, he's pretty confident that it was written prior to 70 A.D. I want to read something to you out of Acts chapter 13, verse 48. No, starts at verse 40. So he says, "Beware therefore lest what has been spoken in the prophets come upon you." And then in 41 he says, "Behold, you despisers, marvel and perish, for I work a work in your days, a work which you will by no means believe, though one were to declare it to you." And so he's given this warning, current tense. So this is, let's just say it's between 30 and 70 AD. He's given this warning. We go back, we find, so it's talking about the prophets in 41, "Behold, you despisers, marvel and perish, for I work a work in your days, a work which you will by no means believe, though one were to declare it to you." We can find that in Habakkuk. So the author of Acts is referring back to the book of Habakkuk. This is Habakkuk chapter 1, starts at verse 5. He says, "Look among the nations and watch, be utterly astounded, for I will work a work in your days which you would not believe, though it were told you." So definitely this is what the author of Acts is saying, hey, beware lest this come upon you. So this is the section of scripture that he's talking about, given the warning in before 70 AD. The next verse, in verse 6, he says, "For indeed I am raising up the Chaldeans." So we'll stop right there real quick before we get into the rest of it, because so this is 70 AD. The Chaldeans were utterly destroyed by Persia in 539 BC. So we know for sure at this time of this exhortation that he's not talking about Chaldeans. There are no more Chaldeans. They're destroyed by Persia 600 years before this. So he goes on and he says, Indeed, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, a bitter and hasty nation, which marches through the breadth of the earth to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity proceed from themselves. Their horses also are swifter than leopards and more fierce than evening wolves. Their charges charge ahead. Their cavalry comes from afar. They fly as the eagle that hastens to eat. They all come for violence. Their faces are set like the east wind. They gather captives like sand. They scoff at kings, and princes are scorned by them. They deride every stronghold, for they heap up earthen mounds and seize it. So before I go into verse 11, I'm going to jump over here, because this army that God's describing right here, he's also describing in Joel chapter 2. "Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, for it is at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. A people come, great and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor will there ever be any such after them, even for many successive generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Surely nothing shall escape them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like swift steeds so they run. With the noise like chariots over mountain tops they leap, like the noise of a flaming fire that devours the stubble, like a strong people set in battle array. Before them the people writhe in pain, all faces are drained of color. They run like mighty men, they climb the wall like men of war. Everyone marches in formation, and they do not break ranks. They do not push one another, everyone marches in his own column. Though they lunge between the weapons, they are not cut down. They run to and fro in the city, they run on the wall, they climb into the houses, they enter at the windows like a thief. The earth quakes before them, and the heavens tremble. The sun and moon grow dark, and the stars diminish their brightness. The Lord gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? Yesterday I did a little piece on the evil heart of unbelief. And out of the abundance of the heart flows all the issues of life. This is a case in point. So remember, we have the author of Luke giving an exhortation, the author of Acts giving the exhortation saying, be careful lest this come upon you. So the warning is current tense. This can happen today. If it couldn't, he wouldn't be warning you. And he goes back and he describes this army. It's a demonic host. I mean, you can, just reading it, there's no doubt about it. He talks about the same army in the book of Joel, chapter 2. And listen to what he says so that verse that I stopped at Habakkuk. Oops, I lost my little bookmark, and it's a tiny book. Found it. So if we go back to chapter 1 in Habakkuk, verse 11. So listen to this. So he describes the demonic host, goes through. I'll read 10 as I'm going into 11. So 10 says, they scoff at kings, and princes are scorned by them. They deride every stronghold, for they heap up earthen mounds and seize it. Then his mind changes. And so this is verse 11. Then his mind changes, and he transgresses. He commits offense, ascribing this power to his God. So the transgression and the committing of offense is the result of the presence of the demonic host, which is what the author of Acts is saying, beware lest this come upon you. Now this shouldn't surprise anybody, because when we're reading, we know that we do not war against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. So it's exactly in context. It's reality. Yeah, there's some food for thought.